Hello, and welcome to tonight's gentle journey. I'm so happy you're here. This is your moment to let the world soften around you, to feel the weight of the day dissolve like sugar in warm tea. Tonight, we'll drift along the Mississippi River, where the water murmurs secrets of days long past. There, beneath the fading glow of twilight, an old man sits his memories as deep and flowing as the river itself. It's a place where fireflies dance like fallen stars, where the air hums with the songs of frogs and nightbirds, and where the water carries stories as old as time, a place where the past lingers just beneath the surface, waiting to be remembered. So settle in, dear listener. Let your breath slow, your thoughts grow quiet. Feel the rhythm of the river in your own heartbeat, steady and sure. And when you're ready, we'll set sail on these silver waters, carried by the current of dreams. The Mississippi River moves like liquid silver beneath the amber glow of twilight, its ancient waters carrying whispers of 1,000 stories. Along its muddy banks, an old man sits alone on a weathered piece of driftwood, his white hair catching the last threads of daylight like spun moonbeams. This is Samuel Clemens, though the world knows him by another name, his hands lined with the geography of 8 decades, rest gently on his knees as he watches the great river flow past with the patience of eternity itself. The water laps softly against the shore with a rhythm older than memory, older than the steamboats that once churned these waters, older than the dreams he carried as a boy. The air is thick with the sweet perfume of magnolia blossoms and the earthy richness of river mud. Somewhere in the distance, a mockingbird calls out its borrowed songs, weaving melodies stolen from wrens and cardinals into the gathering dusk. The sound mingles with the gentle slap of water against the wooden pilings of an old dock, creating a symphony that has lulled countless souls to sleep beside this mighty river. Samuel closes his eyes and lets the evening sounds wash over him like a familiar lullaby. The Mississippi speaks in a language deeper than words, its current carrying not just silt and debris, but memories, dreams, and the accumulated wisdom of all the lives it has touched. Tonight, it speaks to him of boyhood summers and impossible adventures, of a time when the world was vast and mysterious, and every bend in the river promised new wonders. A great blue heron steps carefully through the shallows nearby, its movements deliberate and graceful. It pauses, one leg raised, perfectly still except for the occasional blink of its amber eye. Samuel watches the bird with appreciation, remembering how he used to spend hours as a child observing such creatures, learning their habits, storing up details that would later bloom into stories. The sun sinks lower, painting the sky in watercolors of coral and lavender. Wisps of clouds stretch across the horizon like brushstrokes on an infinite canvas, their edges gilded with gold. The river mirrors this celestial artwork, becoming a pathway of molten light that seems to lead straight into the heart of evening itself. As darkness begins to claim the landscape, Fireflies begin their nightly dance above the tall grass. They blink in and out of existence like tiny stars fallen to earth, creating constellations that shift and change with each breath of wind. Samuel remembers chasing these living sparks with his younger brother, their bare feet slipping on dewy grass, their laughter echoing across the water. The memory rises unbidden, as vivid as if it happened yesterday rather than 70 years ago. He can almost feel the weight of childhood again, the lightness of a body that knew no aches, the boundless energy that made every day an expedition into the unknown. In his mind's eyes, he sees himself at 10 years old, standing on this very bank with a fishing pole made from a willow branch, convinced that the next cast would surely land the legendary catfish that old fishermen swore lived in the deep holes near the bend. A gentle breeze stirs the cattails that line the water's edge, their brown seed heads swaying like a congregation of sleepy monks. The sound is soft and rhythmic, a natural metronome that seems to slow Samuel's heartbeat, drawing him deeper into the peaceful embrace of twilight. Spanish moss drapes from the cypress trees like nature's own curtains, creating secret alcoves where wood ducks nest and raccoons come to drink under cover of darkness. In the growing shadows, Samuel's mind wanders back to those long summer days when he and his friends would build rafts from whatever lumber they could scrounge. They'd spend weeks planning their expeditions, drawing maps with charcoal on pieces of bark, imagining themselves as explorers charting unknown territories. The rafts were crude affairs, barely seaworthy, but they carried the boys' dreams as surely as they carried their weight. He remembers the morning they finally launched their greatest creation, a raft they'd christened the Adventure. It was little more than logs lashed together with rope, topped with planks liberated from various construction sites around town. But to 12-year-old Sam Clemens and his companions, it was a vessel worthy of the great river itself. The water had been calm that morning, smooth as green glass, reflecting the cottonwoods and willows that lined the banks. They'd pushed off with long poles cut from young saplings, their hearts hammering with excitement and just a touch of fear. The current was gentle at first, barely tugging at their makeshift craft, but as they drifted away from the familiar shore, the river began to show its power. Samuel can still feel the sensation of that first long journey, the way the raft rocked beneath his feet, the splash of water against the logs, the gradual realization that they had committed themselves to something larger than their young imaginations had quite grasped. The Mississippi was no longer just the river they played beside. It had become their highway, their destiny, their teacher. A fish jumps nearby, the splash echoing across the water like a single hand clap. Concentric circles spread outward from the spot, catching the last light of day before disappearing into the gathering darkness. Samuel smiles at the sound, remembering how such moments had once filled him with wonder. Everything had been a story then, every ripple a mystery to be solved, every shadow a possibility to be explored. They had drifted for hours that day, the familiar landmarks of their small world gradually falling behind. The boys had grown quieter as the magnitude of their adventure settled over them. The river seemed to grow wider, deeper, more magnificent with each passing mile. They passed islands they'd never seen, backwaters where ancient trees stood knee-deep in dark water, their branches forming cathedrals of green shade. The night sounds grow richer now, as true darkness claims the riverside. Somewhere in the distance, a train whistle calls out long and mournful, its echo rolling across the water like the voice of some great lonely beast. The sound stirs something deep in Samuel's chest, a recognition of all the journeys taken and not taken, all the adventures that live now only in the realm of memory and story. Bullfrogs begin their evening chorus from a hidden sloth, their bass notes providing a foundation for the higher melodies of tree frogs and night birds. An owl calls from the deep woods beyond the river, answered by another from across the water. The sounds layer upon each other like instruments in some vast natural orchestra, each voice finding its place in the eternal song of the Mississippi night. Samuel shifts slightly on his driftwood seat, feeling the day's warmth still radiating from the weathered wood. The river moves past him with hypnotic constancy, each wave catching and releasing the faint starlight that has begun to appear in the deepening sky. He thinks of all the water that has flowed past this spot since that long ago summer, billions upon billions of gallons, carrying their cargo of dreams and memories toward the distant sea. That first raft journey had ended, as all such journeys must, with a return to the familiar world of home and responsibility. But something had changed in the boy who climbed back onto the solid ground of the riverbank. He had tasted the freedom of the flowing water, felt the pull of distant horizons, understood that the world was vast and full of wonders waiting to be discovered. The memories flow through Samuel's mind like the river itself, each one connected to the next by invisible currents of association. He recalls the day he first stood in the pilot house of a steamboat, watching an experienced river pilot read the water like a book written in a language of currents and eddies, sandbars and snags. The man's hands had moved over the wheel with the confidence of long practice, his eyes constantly scanning the water ahead for the subtle signs that spelled safety or danger. The face of the water tells everything, the pilot had told him. If you know how to read it, every ripple has a meaning. Every change in color warns of something below. The river's always talking. You just have to learn its language. Those words had lodged themselves deep in young Sam's imagination, sparking dreams of becoming a river pilot himself, of mastering the great Mississippi's moods and mysteries. For years that dream had shaped his days, driving him to study every aspect of the river's character, to memorize its landmarks and learn its secrets. A gentle splash draws Samuel's attention back to the present moment. A beaver swims past, its wake a silver V spreading behind it in the starlight. The creature pays no attention to the old man on the bank, intent on its own mysterious business in the liquid world of the river. Samuel watches it disappear around a bend, noting the purposeful efficiency of its movements, the way it seems to belong so completely to this watery realm. The stars grow brighter, as the last traces of daylight fade from the western sky. Venus hangs like a diamond just above the tree line, so bright it seems to pulse with its own inner fire. The Milky Way begins to reveal itself as a faint river of light flowing across the heavens, a celestial echo of the earthly waters that murmur past Samuel's feet. In the growing darkness, the memories grow more vivid, as if the night itself were a lens that brought the distant past into sharper focus. He can almost hear the voices of his childhood companions, their excited chatter as they plan new adventures, their laughter echoing across the water on those endless summer days. Tom and Joe and Huck, ready for any escapade that promised even a hint of danger or discovery. They had been pirates for a while, operating from their secret base on an island downstream from town. They'd painted skull and crossbones on a piece of sailcloth and run up their colors on a sapling mast, declaring themselves the terror of the Mississippi. Their piracy had consisted mainly of raiding watermelon patches and swimming holes, but in their imaginations they commanded a fearsome vessel and sailed the 7 seas. The adventure had lasted 3 glorious days before concern for their families had driven them back to civilization. But those 3 days had lived on in Samuel's memory with a vividness that decades could not dim. He could still taste the fish they'd cooked over their driftwood-fired fire, still feel the excitement of sleeping under the stars on their pirate island, still hear the night sounds of the river washing around their temporary kingdom. A night heron calls from somewhere in the marsh, its harsh cry cutting through the gentler sounds of the evening. The call is answered by another bird farther downstream, and Samuel imagines them as sentinels of the river night, keeping watch over the water's mysteries. The thought pleases him, this notion of guardians maintaining their vigil while the rest of the world sleeps. The river carries more than water, he reflects. It carries stories, dreams, the accumulated longings of everyone who has ever stood on its banks and wondered what lay around the next bend. Every ripple contains a wish. Every current carries a hope. The Mississippi is a river of stories flowing endlessly toward an ocean of dreams. As the night deepens, Samuel's breathing falls into rhythm with the gentle lap of waves against the shore. The day's worries seem to dissolve into the darkness, carried away by the eternal flow of the river. Here, beside these ancient waters, time moves differently. The urgent concerns of the modern world fade into insignificance, replaced by something older and more enduring. He thinks of all the people who have sat in this very spot over the centuries. Native Americans watching for the return of migrating wildlife, early settlers dreaming of new lives in an untamed land, runaway slaves following the North Star toward freedom, steamboat crews resting between voyages. Each has added their own story to the river's collection, their own dreams to its flowing library of human hopes. The moon rises over the eastern trees, nearly full and bright enough to turn the river into a highway of silver light. Its reflection wavers on the water's surface, breaking and reforming with each gentle wave. Samuel watches the play of light and shadow, remembering how he and his friends used to imagine they could walk on moonbeams across the water to distant lands where every day was an adventure and every sunset promised new wonders. Those boyhood dreams seemed closer now in the river darkness than they had in all the years since he'd become a man of letters, a celebrity whose words were read around the world. Success and fame had been sweet, but they had also been weights that kept him anchored to the solid ground of adult responsibility. Here, beside the flowing water of his youth, he can feel those weights dissolving, carried away by the current that has no concern for human ambitions. A great horned owl hoots from the woods behind him, its call deep and resonant in the still air. The sound speaks of wilderness still existing just beyond the edges of civilization, of wild spaces where old magic still lives. Samuel draws his coat closer around his shoulders, not from cold, but from a desire to embrace this moment completely, to draw its peace deep into his bones. The river continues its eternal song, whispering secrets that only those who truly listen can understand. It speaks of patience, of the long view that sees beyond momentary troubles to the vast flow of time itself. It tells of continuity, of the endless cycle that connects all things in an intricate web of being. Most of all, it speaks of home, not the home of houses and streets, but the deeper home of belonging to something larger than oneself. As his eyelids grow heavy with the peaceful weight of evening, Samuel feels himself drifting like a child again on a makeshift raft, carried by currents of memory toward dreams as vast and mysterious as the night itself. The river flows on, bearing its cargo of moonlight and memories toward tomorrow, while the old man beside its banks settles deeper into the embrace of a darkness filled with the music of flowing water and the eternal promise of new mornings yet to come.